Hey everyone, it's Michael Shermer, and it's time for another episode of the Michael Shermer Show. But this is a new addition to our programming. This is going to be called Shermer Says. These are solo commentaries on current events. And if things go according to plan, we'll be doing these once a week or so. Maybe more, maybe less, depending on travel and other commitments, like getting the next issue of Skeptic magazine out. Like here it is. Just came out on science expertise and expertise in general, and why there's so little trust in that. As just a general commentary to get us started here on this very subject of why we're doing this, is that the media landscape has changed a lot since we started Skeptic Magazine in 1992. You know, there were just all the major television networks, and if you had something to promote, you had to go on one of those news shows or talk shows, and there weren't that many of them. And there was virtually no online presence at all. All that's changed. I find that when we publish something or release it online digitally, it doesn't get as much traction as it used to for the length of time. That is to say, as a quarterly publication, you know, we could have weeks or months of debate about particular subjects that we've talked about in the magazine, or in my monthly column for Scientific American, which I wrote for 214 consecutive months, 18 years. And when one of those came out, it would generate debate and conversation for weeks. And then toward the end, you know, for days. And now I find when I publish like a blog post or an op-ed somewhere, and I repost it online, you know, it gets traction for maybe a couple hours. You know, so it's not the attention span of readers so much as the competition for content. There's just so much great content now to compete against that the printed word alone is not enough. So that's why we're doing this. That is more video and audio content. And I like it, actually, because I consume a lot myself, which is one reason to do this, while I'm driving or walking the dog or riding my bike or working out or whatever, just doing chores. There's just endless time during the day when you can be filling it with interesting content. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks and great courses and so on. And so I hope you enjoy this. I'm just going to make notes on my phone during the week, which I have been doing this week. And here it is on my notes to go through particular topics that have come up recently. So let's start with Charlie Kirk death threats and Turning Point USA. Okay, I've already released that one solo commentary on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I wanted to draw your attention to another aspect of it, starting with Steven Pinker's New York Times opinion editorial on this. By the way, this is based on Steve's book, When Everyone Knows That Everyone Knows, ... about common knowledge. Steve and I just did a public event this last Monday, and this came up. That is to say, if you listen to conservative media, you'll hear something not something like this. Tyler Robinson assassinated Charlie. You'll hear they killed one of ours. Okay, so I asked Steve about that, and you know his comment was that, you know, Charlie Kirk is sort of the George Floyd of the right. That is to say, the target of moral outrage that something horrible happened, and we're going to use this to bring about the kind of change we want. Okay, we saw this with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests and marches and so on in 2020 after the death of George Floyd. And that's kind of what we're seeing now, though not the riots or anything like that, but organized mostly from the bottom up. But Turning Point USA is the main organization that's going to spearhead this, but just general self-organized support for conservative values and principles to spread them more widely. So one thing I'm predicting with this is that, and this is also a common knowledge problem, that is, when everybody knows that everyone knows. At the moment, the liberal bias is so strong in the media, mainstream media, and especially academia, that it often looks like in polls there's almost no conservatives in the classrooms, for example, in colleges and universities. You'll see these polls that show, you know, 90%, 95% of professors vote Democrat. These are mostly in the social sciences and humanities, but it's still, the slant is pretty heavy in the sciences as well, including all the way to engineering. The only exception is economics departments tend to be more balanced, but even there, it's only like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 liberal versus conservative. In some humanities departments, there's not a single conservative. Or is there? Okay, so here's my point. I think what's going to happen, according to Turning Point USA, they've received over 100,000 applications and queries for opening campus chapters for Charlie Kirk's style of presenting conservative and Christian values and principles, okay? So I think what's probably going to happen is that colleges, universities, and high schools are going to be flooded with these groups, and it's going to be apparent that not everyone in the audience is liberal. So I've been in academia for 40 years, and professors and administrators, they freely talk about Republicans in a very disparaging manner. They joke about them. They make fun of them. They poke fun at them. They disparage them, and as if no one in the room is one of those. And so we can all chuckle and yuck up about how bad Republicans and conservatives are, because, of course, none of us in this room would be like that. Now, if you are one of those, what are you going to do? Well, most people just keep their mouth shut and their head down, because who wants that kind of trouble? So I think one thing is going to happen is that probably the student body is more closely reflective of most of America, which is roughly speaking half and half, or 48% liberal, 48% conservative, more or less, depending on how you divide these things up, with the independent voters filling out the rest. It just simply doesn't make sense that half the people watching mainstream media news stories are not conservative. So the slant that's presented by, and also comedians, that they don't seem to realize that half the people in the audience could very well be conservatives, or at least rightward leaning, even if just right of center. And then them making fun of Trump and Kirk and other conservatives. They're doing this as if no one in the audience is a conservative. So I think what's going to happen is that that's going to change, because everyone's going to know that everyone else knows that the audience is not 99% liberal. And that's a good thing. Even though I'm not conservative, I want two strong parties. I want two strong principled positions on left and right to push back against each other, so we don't get the crazies on the right and the left. Okay. So I think that's one of the good things that's going to come out of the Charlie Kirk assassination and its effects. I wanted to comment about Charlie's debating style. My previous commentary, I made a comment about how impressed I was with how he was able to sit there at a desk and a microphone and have liberal after liberal student come up and challenge him. That's hard to do, is what I meant. I've done a lot of debates in my life, dozens, I don't know, maybe hundreds. And it's stressful. I mean, it's so much easier to just do an in-conversation with somebody, or like in my podcasts, if I just have somebody I'm talking to that I already agree with, it's super easy. If it's somebody I know that I'm going to be differing from in ideas, I have to really prepare. So I admire Charlie for that. He was prepared, but he was not after the truth, because that's not what debates are about. Like these Oxford-style debates, I've done a couple of those. Same thing with Intelligence Squared. I've done a couple of those, 3 of them, I guess, where the audience votes for and against before the debate and after the debate, and you see who wins over the most people, right? So in that sort of setting, you want to be the underdog at the beginning, because it's easier to move people to your side if there's more people on the other side to move, right? But of course, the whole point of that is not, let's figure out what's true about the existence of God, or where morals come from, or whether religion's good or bad for society, and so on. These are many of the debates I've done. The point is to win, and you win by having clever retorts and arguments and shooting down the other person's arguments. And the point isn't to listen to the other person and think, I wonder if they're making a good point. Maybe I'll adopt some of those ideas into my own to try to get closer to the truth. No, the point is to just digest them in order to refute them. And Charlie was good at that, but that's not what the search for truth is all about. So let's not kid ourselves about that. He was doing what all debaters do, trying to win. Charlie, like most conservative Christians, just like most progressive liberals, they already know the truth. The point is to convince you of the truth. Okay, so my next book, which is called Truth, what it is, how to find it, why it still matters, I'm kind of pulling back and taking a larger look at what it is, what it means to look for the truth and be more Bayesian and just say, well, I don't know. This is my position now. I'm 80% confident or 95% confident or 30% confident, but I'm willing to change my mind and flip to the other side or consider other positions if I hear a good argument. Almost no one does that, including me, but that's what we should be doing. So that's kind of the point of my next book. And by the way, we're also going to be making documentary films based on that book because, again, the future of media and publishing is really digital, that is video and audio, as well as the written word. Okay, so, all right, Trump and the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, he was snubbed. Okay, Trump was not snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize. He wasn't eligible. It's astonishing to me. I posted this like 6 times on X, that conservative media keep saying this. He was snubbed, and here's why he should have won, and so on. You just go to the Nobel Peace Prize website, and it tells you exactly what constitutes eligibility. Submission period. Nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize are accepted until January 31st. Limited nomination period. Nominations for next year's candidates are welcome to be registered in our online form from mid-October. Okay, so for Trump to win the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize, you should start nominating him, or somebody should, starting mid-October this year, 2025. So the idea that he was robbed would be something like your favorite movie, the best movie you've ever seen, came out the day before the Oscar ceremony, and you are outraged that they didn't give that film the Academy Award. Well, because the Academy Awards are for the previous year's film. So the 2025 Academy Awards, the Oscars, are given for films that came out in 2024 during the eligibility time period. And that's it. That's as simple as it could be. They continue. The committee meets regularly from mid-February through September to discuss and steadily narrow the field of candidates. The Norwegian Nobel Committee decides who will be awarded the Nobel Prize, and then it's announced on the Friday of the first full week of October. So Trump should, very well be in the running for sure. I absolutely agree with that. But that's not going to happen until next year. So if you think he deserves it, just nominate him and wait till next year. Okay. Okay, let's think about Trump, good and bad. Again, I think in keeping with my previous commentaries on Trump, generally I've not been a big fan over the years, as you all know. But are you able to say, like, let's say with the Israeli-Gaza peace negotiation that Trump helped orchestrate, or mainly made orchestrate, although Jared Kushner and surely Secretary of State Marco Rubio had a big role in that. So maybe they'll also win the Nobel Prize. I heard Neil Ferguson on Bari Weiss podcast say that wouldn't it be rich if Jared Kushner got the Nobel Peace Prize instead of Trump? And then he recalled that this happened with Nixon when Henry Kissinger was given the Nobel Peace Prize for bringing about the end of the Vietnam War, and that Nixon was pissed. Okay, this could happen. You never know. But in general, I think, are you able to assess what Trump does neutrally, rationally? That is to say, could you make a list of, like, here's the 10 things he's done that I like. Here's the 10 things he's done that I dislike. Can you do that? I do this all the time. This isn't the subject of this particular podcast, but for example, you should be able to say, maybe you have to couch it this way. I can't stand Trump, but he did good on this one thing. Okay. And maybe you say, I've been clamoring for peace in the Middle East, or the end of the Gazan genocide, as many call it, and Trump brought it about. So, okay, I'm going to acknowledge that was a good thing. Okay, people like Mark Ruffalo, I haven't seen if he's commented yet on this, but he's been ranting for months about, we need a ceasefire, we need to stop the genocide. He hates Trump. Will he say, okay, yeah, all right, I'll give him this one. That was a good thing. Or Greta Thunberg. No, this is never going to happen. This isn't going to happen. These people are not rational. So if you're not able to make a list of pluses and minuses, because no POTUS is 100% good or 100% evil. And you should be able to do that also for Trump. Okay. Tylenol and autism. Okay, we published online, skeptic.com. Go to our articles. Just click on articles and it'll pop right up. It's one of the more recent ones. This is a nice example of what you hear in the media and what's actually true. That is to say, is there some connection between Tylenol and autism? Yeah, there appears to be. maybe. Possibly in the third trimester, if women take Tylenol due to having fevers, there may be a link. There's certainly a correlation, an association. The causal chain is not super easy to follow or track medically, but it's possibly there. But as Dr. William Meller, my personal physician, but also a medical researcher here in Santa Barbara, he's our new Skeptic. He wrote a beautiful article for us, just reviewing all the available evidence, and it's extensive on both, yes, there is, or no, there isn't, or we can't decide, meta-analyses and so on. And like most things, it's complicated. But as he points out, having a fever of, 104, 105 in the third trimester of your pregnancy is also not good. And that Tylenol helps reduce fevers, and that's a good thing. So like all things, there are trade-offs. It's the same thing with the myocarditis and vaccines. You'll hear people on podcasts ranting about the COVID-19, the mRNA vaccine causing myocarditis, the inflammation of the heart. And so thankfully, this physician here, Michael Osterholm, with his new book, The Big One, How We Must Prepare for Future Deadly Pandemics. So he was just on the show. You can go to the podcast and find that. It's so good. And he's just like my Dr. Meller and shows, well, there's pluses and minuses here and there. Yes, all vaccines have side effects. Yes, there is some connection between the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines and myocarditis. But what no one ever mentions is that the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself causes myocarditis at a rate higher than the vaccines do. So you take your pick. You take the vaccine and you have a risk of myocarditis. You don't take the vaccine, you have a higher risk of getting myocarditis. By the way, the risks are still very low for both of them. But, as always, as Thomas Sowell always says, there are no solutions in life. There's just trade-offs. You try this, you're going to pay that price. You try something else, there's going to be side effects or whatever. That's just the way it goes. All right, so check those out. Okay, Antifa, I've been in a Twitter war with a particularly progressive leftist about commenting about the claim that Antifa is an organization. So Trump has, announced that we are declaring Antifa to be a terrorist organization. So one of the responses that progressives and leftists have is that it's not an organization, it's a movement. Okay, this is an insane, ridiculous debate. What difference does it make what you call it? These are individuals, even if they're bottom-up, self-organized, they're organized and they're planning violent, often, aggressive, violent, destructive marches and protests. Okay, not all of them, but please don't go down this road of they were mostly peaceful protests. And then you see the video footage that they're showing of fires burning in the background. Some Starbucks goes up in flames, or a Bank of America, or, some government agency or whatever. Most recently, it's been Antifa's been targeting ICE agents. Okay. Even if you think you don't like ICE, or you think the immigration policy is not a good one for the United States and it needs to be modified. Okay. You can't possibly think that physically attacking ICE agents with bricks, for example, is acceptable any more than you, if you're liberal listening to this, would think that the right-wing protesters on January 6th were justified in storming the Capitol building. Those were crimes they committed. And so, again, can you put yourself in a neutral, rational position and say, I'm capable of applying a principle across the board, either on the left or the right? Okay, that would be a sign of rationality if you're able to do that. If you're not able to do it, then you're subject to the my side bias. My side's always right, the other side's always wrong. And I'm going to twist the evidence and arguments accordingly, like a lawyer. That's what lawyers do. That's what they're trained to do. That's their job. The job of a lawyer is to win the argument. The structure, the rational structure to achieve the truth about justice in the legal system is called an adversarial system. So the one lawyer has one side, the other lawyer has the other side, and the jury or the judge is the peer review, you might say, as we do in science. They're the ones assessing the two arguments. But the point of a lawyer is not to get to the truth about what really happened, is to win their case, right? So that's how we determine truth in the judicial system. And so what I'm arguing we should be doing is don't be like lawyers. Be more like a scientist. Like, I just want to know what's true. Okay. And I think quibbling over whether Antifa is an official organization or not is missing the point. Political violence is never okay. It's not okay on the right. It's not okay on the left. It's just not okay, period. Okay. Other news this week, Bari Weiss in CBS News. I've known Bari since she was right out of college. She was my editor at the Wall Street Journal, she was working for the book review department. So I review regularly for the Wall Street Journal, and she was my editor, and she was great. And then I saw her move up to the opinion editorial department. Then she got snatched away by the New York Times, and I did a couple pieces for her there. She's just great. Then she left for reasons everybody already knows. But if you don't, you can go on there and see her, find her comments about that. And then she started the Free Press, which grew very rapidly because, again, back to where I started this commentary, there's a need for this. The media is in a rapidly changing mode. And I think the old school media people like CBS are scrambling to figure out what to do. It is obvious to everybody that has two eyes and two neurons that the mainstream media has a liberal slant and bias, and that something needs to be done about it. And they have yet to be able to navigate that. So I think what they're trying to do in purchasing the Free Press and putting Bari in charge is to say, okay, let's get back to being neutral. Okay, now, since this has happened, I have a number of liberal friends and even some progressives that I hang out with, and they're outraged. Oh my God, how could CBS hire Bari Weiss? She's horrible. It's like, horrible? What do you mean? Well, what a far left person means by horrible is neutral, politically centrist, not taking sides automatically, no matter what the position is, but assessing each argument or case or principle or position by itself, and then listen to the arguments and evidence for each one and then decide. So I think the Free Press has been very good about doing that, better than most. I did that public event with them on Does the West Need a Religious Revival? And Bari adroitly moderated that with myself and Adam Carolla on one side and Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Ross Douthat on the other side. It's really a great debate. And it's, again, part of that search for truth. Let's put all the positions on the table and, you decide. Okay. So I think CBS News, and then obviously if they succeed at this, NBC, ABC, NPR, PBS, all the other, CNN, MSNBC, they're all going to have to follow suit, just if for no other reason, for economic reasons, as an economic model. The search for truth and being more politically neutral is going to be the new norm and the new economic model. Okay, last point here, or last 2 points, I guess. The Skeptic Research Center study. Again, go to skeptic.com and just click on data, and you'll see our latest study done showing the positions that people hold on political violence. Here's what we found. Let me just comment in general. The Skeptic Research Center is run for us by Ananda Said and Kevin McCaffrey. They were both my PhD students, and now they are themselves professors at the University of Texas. And they are data analysts. They are professional social scientists that are expert at analyzing data. So instead of using Pew or Gallup or Barna or any other polling agencies, we just started, we'll do our own. Because, we want to make sure we trust the data, and also we want to ask questions in a way that these other agencies are not doing. So that's what we've been doing, and they have just been spectacular. This particular one asked support for political violence, in which we found about 1 in 3 younger adults, these are Gen Z and millennials, expressed support for political violence. Support for political violence was highest among those identifying politically as very liberal. Liberal Gen Z women were more supportive of political violence than were Gen X and baby boomer men. I'm one of those. I'm a baby boomer. Americans with the highest level of educational attainment, graduate or professional degree, were about twice as likely to support political violence as those with less formal education. And over half of Black Gen Z adults agreed that violence is often necessary to create social change. Okay, so check that out. Go to skeptic.com, click on data, and you'll see that whole survey on support for political violence on our graphs and charts. Join that. We don't offer a lot of theory about why this would happen. You can read our executive overview and Ananda and Kevin's analysis of the data and what more needs to be done. So we're doing more studies on this. Political violence is, kind of pushed to the center of the culture wars now. So we're going to do more work on this. If I had to speculate, I guess I would say at the moment, liberal left-wing violence is more prominent than right-wing violence. If you just took like the last 50 years and added them all up, there's plenty to go around on both sides. I don't think we have to do the, which one is worse or both sides is. Just drop that. Just say, okay, what's going on here? If I had to guess, it would be something like two things. One, that, the point of conservatism in the kind of Burkean style, Edmund Burke conservatism is to maintain the status quo. Okay, you do that through law and order and maintaining institutions without making any too radical changes. Liberals, on the other hand, their job is to change things, to bring about a better social and political world, cultural world for everybody. And you got to do that by making changes to some of the old systems that don't work. Okay, so we need a balance of both. Obviously, a lot of institutions have been around for centuries. They've been tried and tested and tweaked and improved. So, and just burn the whole thing down and start over like they did in the French Revolution. By the way, this is why Edmund Burke supported the American Revolution versus the French Revolution. The Americans wanted to, maintain and keep the institutions that were working and fine-tune them and organize them under the Constitution. Whereas the French just wanted to tear the whole thing down, cut off everybody's heads and start over, renaming the years and the new metric system. And some, a few good things out of that, I guess, with the metric system. But in general, the bloodshed and violence was the result of tearing things down too quickly. So if you're a liberal and you think, well, we got to bring about change, and you try it non-violently and it doesn't work, or in your mind it's not working, then at least in some people's minds, violence is justified. And this has gotten much worse in the last, say, 15, 20 years with this whole theme of, silence is violence and words are violence. No, words are not violence. They're not. There's a huge difference. And we have a very high bar for arguing that somebody's speech rose to the level of inciting violence. That's the crowding, yelling fire in a crowded theater argument, which almost never holds. Okay, so in general, it's better to not. But if I had to speculate, it would be particularly if you've been told for 15, 20 years that America is just a racist hellhole, that everybody is racist, even blacks are racist. Women are misogynist. How can this be? Because it's all unconscious. It's systemic. It's built into the system. There's almost nothing you can do about it. We have to tear down the whole system to start over, get rid of these people, and so on. That's what happens when people come to believe these ideas that are false. They're false ideas. America is not the same as it was in the 1950s, much less the 1850s. And same thing for the economic empowerment and political freedom of women. The 2020s are not the same as the 1920s or the 1820s. It's just not the same. And if you keep telling people that and they believe it, they're going to get frustrated and think, well, we've tried for decades or centuries to bring about social change peacefully. It's not working, so let's just tear the whole thing down. Let's use violence. Okay, that's not working. It's not good. This is not good. We have to get back to our principles, and that's what our work here at the Skeptic Society and Skeptic Magazine and my books and so on is all about. So I think that's enough for today. This is Michael Shermer, and the new program is called Shermer Says, part of the Michael Shermer Show. Thanks for listening.